Between March the 10th and the 21st, representatives of the International Council of Women will join women from member states of the UN and other non-governmental organizations from all over the world at the 69th Commission of the Status of Women at the UN in New York. The theme of the CSW will be the 30th anniversary of the 4th UN World Conference for Women, held in Beijing in 1995, when 189 countries unanimously adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action on Gender Equality. A consensus was reached in 12 areas of concern regarding the full development of equality for women with men. The CSW will review the implementation of the declaration. I'm Gillian Gold. I chair the Constitution Committee of ICJW, and it's my pleasure to introduce one of the ICJW representatives at the Beijing conference, Karmela Belinki from Finland. Karmela is a journalist, author, and professor who has had long service on the executive of ICJW. Hi, Karmela.
Hello, Gillian.
Karmela, will you please tell us how and when you became involved in ICJW?
Well, it must have been in the beginning of the 1980s when there was an executive meeting in Stockholm. And the then president of Judiska Kvinnoklubben in Stockholm, which was and is the affiliate of ICJW in Stockholm, asked whether I would be interested to join, and that's how it began. The fact that Finland has a very long tradition of Zionist movement, and that Vitso is very strong in Finland, has always been, meant that the ICJW was more or less unknown. But I was lucky enough to have Margot Friedman as a very good friend, and so it started, and I joined, and here I am.
How did you come to go to the Beijing conference?
Well, I've been to all the previous ones from 1975 in Mexico, and Copenhagen 5 years later in 1980, and in Nairobi in 1985. And as a veteran, I also participated in the Beijing conference, but there more or less as a journalist, whereas I had double roles in the previous ones. The main conference is concerned a very pleasant one, because there were no big differences that would cause riots as in the previous ones, where one question was always very topical, both in Mexico and in Copenhagen, and that was the even so-called mantra that Zionism is racism. But that did not come up in Nairobi and in Beijing either, because it was already sort of behind. But as far as the NGO conference was concerned, was not very pleasant. It was very far away from the main conference, and it was raining all the time. But everybody who was somebody was there. There were 10,000 people. And the ICJW, together with Hadassah and Vitso, tried to organize seminars, but it didn't come to anything. It didn't come to anything for anybody because of the bad organization. There were two things that I'd like to tell. One was that Hillary Clinton had a kind of private seminar for her own people, but as the doors were open, everybody who wanted to went there, so was I. And it was the first time that I heard her alive, and she was a brilliant speaker, but what she said had nothing to do with the theme and definitely nothing to do with women. But on the contrary, then Bella Abzug, who was a feminist from the beginning to the end, was wonderful. She was very ill, she couldn't walk. She had 4 very sturdy women who carried her, and she was as wet as all of us because she spoke outdoors. But what she said was something that never anybody could forget. She had all the power and the strength that she had before, but she died a few years after, and when she came to Beijing, she must have been in her mid-70s. But you would never tell. She started to say that, please close your eyes and listen. Don't look at me, just listen to me. And I think that was a very good thing to say, considering what was happening. And the main feeling from Beijing, plus Beijing at that time, was a very pleasant one, because there were no big conflicts that caused unrest at the main conference, and most certainly not amongst the NGOs. The fact that the Chinese had no experience in NGO conferences and NGOs in general had to do with the fact that they had no free associations or free organizations, and definitely no experience. But they were very benevolent, and they tried their best, so that the weather was what it was, and if the constructions and the organization had been a bit better, it would have been more tolerable. As it was unbearable.
Had you had expectations before you went of what was going to be come from it?
I was afraid that the old questions would cause a kind of conflict between first of all, between the big powers, and secondly, that the Jewish question, that is Israel, would come up again. But neither happened. The declaration and the program was passed under very friendly and all and tolerable feelings. So no, my general view was after the conference that it was worth it, and it was very important for the Chinese.
Why was it important for the Chinese?
Because it was the first time that the Chinese were organizing anything like that. And it was a public relations thing for them. And they learned a lot about how the free world is functioning, and how important it is to let their people participate and also organize. Well, we know that the Chinese have made progress in business, but the NGOs are still not there the way they should be. I don't think that they allow any free organizations even now.
Were there any anticipations that you had that weren't fulfilled?
Not really. As a long-time journalist, I don't anticipate anything, and I didn't even 30 years ago. I must say that, as I pointed out many times, that the whole thing went very well, and I was pleased, and so were most people who attended it.
Do you think that women's rights have improved since 1995? And if so, how?
Yes and no. There was a time between the Beijing conference 30 years ago and let's say 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago. And after that, there have been many setbacks. There are many places in the world where women's rights have been cut, even the basic rights to their own world and to their own lives, and that they have all, and even education. So if and the setbacks are political, but they are also sexist. And somehow these two things go together, that if there is a political system in a country which doesn't favor democracy or equality, then it becomes very misogynic and treats women badly, to put it mildly. And there are too many places in the world right now, and more are coming.
What would you particularly like ICJW affiliates to pursue, both at the Commission and within their own affiliates?
ICJW has a very important mission to fulfill in the UN, to be there, to be a kind of watchdog, and to interfere whenever it's possible and also suitable. ICJW is a world organization and has to remain one, and has to develop the world organizational qualities of it. The UN is not the only organization. There are so many others, and I do wish that the regional and local organizations of the ICJW would open up to non-Jewish organizations who have the same kind of missions, to promote women's rights and women's lives and so on. It's very important for us to be seen and to be heard and to cooperate with others. I know that it happens already, but it should be more self-evident, because we don't live in an isolated world anymore. You don't have to travel everywhere. There's Zoom and there's Team and there's WhatsApp and whatnot. You can always participate without being there in person, because it's first of all not possible for all women to do so, but they have to be organized in order to be aware. And there I think that the ICJW has to promote its own public relations, and not only public relations, but awareness of what's going on and what's should be done also internally and particularly externally.
Thank you very much, Karmela. Thank you for your recollections, and thank you also for leaving us with an achievable aim for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian.